Tonight, you are going to do something your ancestors did 74,000 years ago. You are going to survive. Not a volcano, not a catastrophe, just the ordinary act of waking up, making decisions, adapting to whatever the day hands you. But the reason you can do that at all, the reason your brain is wired to problem solve under pressure, to improvise when resources run out, to keep moving when everything collapses, that reason was forged in fire. Literal fire. The largest volcanic eruption Earth has seen in 2.5 million years, and you almost weren't here. 74,000 years ago, a supervolcano on the island of Sumatra detonated with a force beyond anything in recorded human history. Scientists call it the Toba supereruption. You have probably heard of Mount St. Helens, the 1980 eruption that devastated Washington state and made headlines around the world. Toba was roughly 10,000 times more powerful than that. 10,000. The explosion punched straight through the atmosphere. Ash spread across South Asia, across the Indian Ocean, along the eastern coast of Africa. In some places, the ash settled 6 meters deep. You could have buried a 2-story building under it and lost the roof. Then the sky closed. Sulfur dioxide from the eruption bonded with water vapor in the stratosphere and formed a chemical veil that blocked sunlight for years. Not days. Years. Global temperatures dropped by as much as 10 degrees Celsius. That does not sound like much until you understand what 10 degrees does to a forest. Photosynthesis slowed. Trees stopped producing fruit. Animals that depended on those trees ran out of food. The predators that depended on those animals followed. The chain collapsed from the top down and from the bottom up simultaneously. And somewhere in Africa, a small population of Homo sapiens, your direct ancestors, faced conditions that should have finished them. Some researchers believe the entire human population dropped to fewer than 10,000 individuals. Others put the number far lower. Your DNA carries the proof of this either way. Deep inside the human genome, there is a bottleneck event, a sudden dramatic narrowing of genetic diversity, that dates to roughly this period. When scientists look at the variation in human DNA today and compare it to other great apes, they find something strange. Humans are astonishingly similar to each other at the genetic level, far more similar than you would expect from a species that has been around for 300,000 years. The explanation is Toba. Humanity was nearly erased. What survived was a small, geographically isolated group, and every person alive today descends from that group. Nearly. Here is what the scientists found when they went looking for who survived and how. In 2024, archaeologists excavating a site in the lowlands of northwestern Ethiopia, a place called Shinfa-Metema 1, pulled something from the sediment that changed the story. They found tools. Not simple tools. Varied tools. Tools for fishing, tools for cutting meat, tools for grinding plant material. All of it dated to the exact period of the Toba eruption. The people at this site were not frozen in place waiting for the world to return to normal. They were not doing what they had always done and hoping it would still work. They were switching. When the fish were scarce, they hunted. When hunting failed, they processed plants. When the plants changed, they followed the river. They held multiple strategies at once and rotated between them as the environment shifted beneath their feet. This is not what most species do under catastrophic stress. Most species have a strategy. One strategy, refined over thousands of generations, deeply embedded, and when catastrophe hits, they do that strategy harder. They forage in the same places with more urgency. They follow the same routes with more desperation. And when the environment no longer supports that strategy, they disappear. The fossil record is full of species that did exactly what they had always done, right up until the moment they went extinct. These people at Shinfa-Metema 1 did something different. They changed. Richard Wrangham, a biological anthropologist at Harvard who has spent decades studying what separates Homo sapiens from every other species that ever lived, argues that this flexibility is not just one advantage among many. It is the advantage, not the big brain in isolation, not fire, not language, though all of those matter. specifically the capacity to abandon a working strategy and adopt a new one before the old one kills you, and then to teach that new strategy to your children. This, Wrangham argues, is what we are. This is the engine under the hood, and it almost certainly saved the species at Toba. Think about what this means for you personally. Every human alive today descends from the people who survived that winter. Not as a metaphor, genetically. The bottleneck in your DNA is the fingerprint of that event. The behavioral wiring that carried those survivors through, the restlessness, the willingness to try something new, the discomfort with doing nothing when conditions change, was passed to their children. And their children's children. All the way down to the body you are in right now. At Pinnacle Point on the southern coast of South Africa, archaeologists found something that sharpens this even further. They found continuous evidence of human occupation through the entire Toba event, before the ash, during the ash, after the ash. The people there did not vanish. They kept using the caves. They kept harvesting seafood from the coast. They kept producing ochre pigments, among the earliest clear evidence of symbolic thinking in the human record. The volcano did not stop them. They adapted to it as one more disruption in a long line of disruptions that this particular group of humans had learned to absorb. Eleanor Scerri, a paleoanthropologist at the Max Planck Institute of Geoanthropology, has argued that this is actually what Homo sapiens fundamentally is. Not a single population in a single homeland following a single strategy. Multiple populations, multiple environments, multiple approaches running in parallel across the continent. That redundancy, that spread, that stubborn refusal to concentrate everything into one way of surviving, that is what Toba could not kill. You cannot wipe out a species that has distributed itself across incompatible environments because no single catastrophe reaches everywhere at once. Here is the thing about your brain that nobody says to you directly. You were built for the worst, not for comfort, not for routine, for disruption. For exactly the conditions where your plan stops working and you need another one immediately. The prefrontal cortex that lets you imagine a future scenario you have never lived through. The hippocampus that stores not just what happened, but the emotional texture of it so you can recognize danger patterns faster the next time. The amygdala that flags a threat before your conscious mind has processed it. The social circuitry that drives you toward other people under stress rather than away from them. All of it was pressure tested under conditions you will never face. Anne Masten, a psychologist at the University of Minnesota, who has studied human resilience across cultures and catastrophes for over 30 years, found something that surprised her when she started compiling the data. Resilience is not rare. It is not a gift distributed to exceptional people. It is the default human response to adversity. Most people, when genuinely catastrophic things happen to them, do not collapse permanently. They reorganize. They find a new way to function. She called this ordinary magic, not because it is a small thing, because it is a common thing. It is what humans do, which is what those people in Ethiopia were doing 74,000 years ago. Not heroically, not with any awareness that they were carrying the future of the species. Just surviving. Fishing from a river that was less full than it used to be. Napping stone tools in the pale light that filtered through the ash. Teaching their children where to find food in a world that had been rearranged by something none of them could explain or name. Your nervous system was not designed for stability. It was designed for this, for the moment the environment changes faster than your current strategy can keep up with, for the moment the resources disappear and you have to locate different ones, for the moment everything you assumed was permanent turns out not to be. That moment is not new. It is 74,000 years old. And the people who survived it did not do so by being exceptional. They did it by being flexible, by fishing when they could not hunt, by hunting when they could not fish, by moving when staying stopped working, by teaching their children not just what to do, but how to adapt when what to do was not yet clear. You come from those people, not poetically, biologically. It is in the structure of your genome, it is in the architecture of your nervous system, every tool your brain has for handling uncertainty, for tolerating ambiguity, for generating solutions under pressure. That toolkit was shaped by the people who stood at the edge of extinction and did not stop. The next time something in your life breaks, or changes without warning, or strips away what you assumed was stable, let that land differently. What you are feeling is ancient. What you are capable of is older still. The volcano made sure of it. And because the people at Shinfa-Metema were still fishing when the ash finally stopped falling, you are here to know that.